From Interfaith Alliance, this is The State of Belief. I'm Interfaith Alliance President Reverend Paul Brandeis Raushenbush in New York City. Fighting for reproductive justice in Florida in the name of religious freedom for all. Organizing poll chaplains in North Dakota to protect the sanctity of every vote. Standing in moral opposition to a neo-Nazi march through the streets of a city in Pennsylvania. These are all initiatives from Interfaith Alliance affiliates in different parts of the country. This week, you'll hear the inspiring stories of these projects and others, bringing people of diverse backgrounds and beliefs together around shared values and a vision for our country that includes everyone, not just some. In the past couple years, I've conducted so many memorable interviews with some of the great thinkers, strategists, and faith leaders of our times on The State of Belief. They have given you and me encouragement for these difficult times and helped us feel less alone. So I want to make sure that you are subscribed to the State of Belief podcast at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. Or just visit stateofbelief.com/subscribe. That way you'll never miss a conversation, and you'll also have access to almost 100 past interviews with guests like Dr. Anthea Butler, Jeff Charlotte, Bishop William Barber, Rabbi Sharon Brous, Dr. Jamar Tisby, Rob Reiner, and many, many others. And if you're listening, it's a good bet that some people you know would benefit from the State of Belief as well. Help spread the word. Tell people in your networks about what you're hearing and subscribe today. The State of Belief is made possible in great part by the generous support of our listeners. If you've made a donation, thank you. You're helping to get these conversations heard by more people who need them. If you haven't pitched in yet, information on how to do that is available at stateofbelief.com. And you can find out more about the work of Interfaith Alliance and join us at interfaithalliance.org. And now to my guests. Reverend Dr. Sharon Harris Ewing is president of the board of Interfaith Alliance of Southwest Florida. Sharon is an ordained minister and an educator. Reverend Ann Flynn is a deacon in the Episcopal Church and a leader with Interfaith Alliance of Pennsylvania. And Ross Keyes is a longtime activist and political strategist, currently heading up Interfaith Alliance of North Dakota. Welcome, each of you, to the State of Belief.
Thank you.
For having us.
I just want to start with a note of deep, deep gratitude for each of you, for all that you are doing. I'm so honored that we are affiliated with you and just so grateful for the work that is being done around the country. When we think about the faith communities in places like Southwest Florida, in places like Pennsylvania, in places like North Dakota, what you're trying to do there is not always easy, what you're trying to do is actually create communities that value all people and understand this deeply American ideal that everyone deserves equal respect from whatever tradition or belief you have, equal respect under the law and within communities. And so thank you. I just, I'm just so honored that Interfaith Alliance can provide this network and this support. And so let me just start out with great thanks to each of you. Now, Ross and Sharon have been with us before, so I'm going to start with Reverend Ann Flynn. And maybe you can just kind of dive right in. We were watching and just, so moved by what you were able to do to organize in response to a Harrisburg neo-Nazi march. Maybe you can just say a little bit about what happened there and why it was so important to speak up.
Well, it was a surprise that the neo-Nazis marched in Harrisburg. And what was a pleasant surprise was that we, Interfaith, and various organizations in the Harrisburg area were able to respond quickly. So we gathered the day after the event. And that was something that I think was in part facilitated by Interfaith Alliance of Pennsylvania, but by the networking that we have been doing. And so that
it's so
I think
important.
Is
This this is the reason to have these networks in place, so that first of all, can we just take a moment and say, what in the world are neo-Nazis still feeling empowered to march in our communities? I mean, this is not normal.
Mm-hmm.
This is very, very bad, and so like, I hate to normalize. The Nazis were marching, but unfortunately, it is becoming all too frequent. And so, just what you just said is so important. How are we prepared for this? And one way that we can be prepared is by networking in times where neo-Nazis are not marching, so that when they do, we're able to show up. And I just feel like that is such an important message. So who were some of the people who you immediately said, we got to be in conversation with these folks to help us show up? Who were some of the people who Interfaith Alliance of Pennsylvania was able to reach out to immediately?
Well, John Flood, who's an organizer in the area, was one that really brought us all together. And we were lucky enough to have Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission become involved, and Common Defense, which is an organization of veterans.
Just to stop there for a second, I think it's so great that veterans were like, like, didn't we fight a war against Nazis at one point? I mean, and we can't cede the idea of patriotic people coming up and saying neo-Nazis are not welcome in this country. And I think it's important that as wide of a net as you were able to spread, that's a very interesting collaboration. It's not just kind of a couple people in collars showing up. It represents the people alongside members of different faith traditions.
Exactly. We all gathered, and the energy was there. We were fortunate enough to have the media present too, so we got good coverage after that. And the message was so important to me, and it was important to people of faith or no faith gathered on those steps on Saturday morning. And the message was, we are responsible for ourselves and our neighbors. That's why we're here. And that was the statement. That's why we're here.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And that's what it means to be a community. We're responsible for one another, and that we need to, and that I think is a very, is really an important message right now in this moment when the tensions are rising and the threats are rising. I mean, there are threats all the time. I want to turn to you, Ross, because you've been doing so much great activism, so much great organizing. And one of the areas that we've been really promoting around the country to all the affiliates and our network is, what are the polls going to look like? Because people are, both poll workers and voters are going to be subjected to some serious intimidation, under the guise of, we're just there to make sure no one cheats. But, cheating is less common than intimidation, frankly. And so, Ross, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what's going on in North Dakota and how important it is to have something called poll chaplains. Can you explain what they are, first of all, and why they're so important in this time?
Well, poll chaplains, it's been found when they're present at polling locations, they provide a calming influence. They're people who naturally are talented at bringing people together, calming problems down, doing that sort of thing that would make a polling area a little bit safer for folks that may not feel safe.
Right. It's like a de-escalation almost. It's like a nonviolent intervention, which says, okay, we're going to show up in our capacity as religious leaders. So if people feel comfortable, wearing a collar or whatever, but they're saying we're here for everyone. We're here to ensure that this is a safe space for people to exercise their right to vote. I mean, am I getting that correct?
Absolutely. Now, it doesn't have much of a history in North Dakota, I understand. I've been in conversation with the elections director at the Secretary of State, and when I brought up, well, have you worked with poll chaplains before in the state? No, not that they were aware of. But I've been pushing out some trainings by Faiths United to Save Democracy. I was on the training myself this past Monday. It was really, really good. I don't know how many people how many of the pastors in my network are going to do this, but it just seems like a kind of a logical thing that what can it hurt to have these folks trained up if they're able to go and act as poll observers? So pushing out the trainings. Next week on my monthly call with my partners across the state, we've got the International Center for Religion and Diplomacy coming on to provide a de-escalation training. And we've been working in partnership with organizations such as the League of Women Voters to see what they're doing in terms of their activities as poll watchers. Some of our poll people may sign in as part of their network, nonpartisan, just to provide a safe space.
It's really, really important. Say again the name. It's Faiths United
to Save Democracy. And they've had a series of 4 poll chaplain trainings. Like I said, I was on the last one this week. There's another one coming up on September 30th.
You don't have to be part of an affiliate or Interfaith Alliance affiliate or something. People can do this in your own community and see like if there are other people who are signed up. So it's an important resource. And I love that you mentioned the League of Women Voters, who I'm like a big fan of. Speaking of League of Women Voters is the way I met Reverend Sharon. Do you remember that? Like this is 2 years ago around this time. It seems like, a longer time because we've done so much good work together. But I spoke at a League of Women Voters gathering, and I just want to shout out to the League because that was wild. In Southwest Florida in Collier County, there were probably 80 people on this call that I was talking about religion and democracy and Christian nationalism. And you were on that call and you were like, you know what, maybe Interfaith Alliance of Southwest Florida is in order. And so Southwest Florida is one of our more recent Interfaith Alliances, and you all have gotten busy. And this is really exciting. The organizing that you've done, and I've been talking about how important you're kind of stepping up. And I've seen videos of you showing up in school boards where you've seen, speaking out, saying we don't want Christian nationalism in our schools, and speaking out on issues of LGBTQ equality. And now, under really as an important religion and democracy issue and religious freedom issue, you all have really begun to focus on Amendment 4. Tell us about what Amendment 4 is in Florida, and then also how Interfaith Alliance of Southwest Florida decided to get involved.
Sure. And I do remember that call very well, Paul. It was actually, I believe, Halloween of 2022. And Kristen Michette and I were on that call, and she was in charge of Unitarian Universalist lecture series, and she got you to come, and then we started the affiliate, and we've been very excited ever since. And I thank you for this opportunity and also for all the support that we get from National. It means a lot. In terms of Amendment 4, it is to limit government interference in abortion. And basically, in July, Florida implemented a 6-week abortion ban, which, as all of you know, is pretty meaningless since most women don't even know that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. And this amendment, if passed, would enshrine in the Constitution abortion rights very similar to Roe v. Wade. And the sad, well, there are many sad parts, but one of the sad parts right now is that the governor and some of the government agencies are actively working against it. And many of us are saying, leave it to the people. You put this on the ballot and we want to decide. In Florida, it takes a 60% majority to pass a constitutional amendment. So you can imagine that there are a lot of people working very hard to get it passed. And
yeah, you're a pastor. You're from, you're ordained, and have served churches. For you, why is this so important as a religion issue and a religious freedom issue?
Well, I want to answer that with 2 comments. One is, for me, it's first and foremost is a religious freedom issue, that when anyone tries to say the only faithful, or perhaps more accurately, the only Christian response is to support a full total abortion ban, we need to be, as Interfaith Alliance has been doing for 30 years, to speak up and say, those folks don't speak for us, and that many, many, many people of faith support full reproductive rights and comprehensive health care for women. So that's the first argument that we've made. The other reason that it's important to me that the board of the Interfaith Alliance of Southwest Florida voted unanimously and enthusiastically to support Amendment 4 and to publicly advocate for it, because I think many pastors, I am ordained, but I'm not serving a church at this time. I think many people who are serving churches or synagogues or other faith communities, and many religious leaders themselves, do not feel empowered, do not feel able to speak out, because there's so much diversity within their own faith community. And so for those of us who are people of faith and religious leaders, I think we especially have to stand up and say, yes, people of faith do. We sent out trying to figure out how do we be public about this. We sent out a press release, and because, well, doesn't matter why, one of the local TV stations interviewed me and Reverend Tony Fisher, who's a minister at the Unitarian Universalist congregation. And actually, unbeknownst to us, a rabbi was part of the segment when it aired. But it was pitched as, this might surprise you. People of faith support Amendment 4. I mean, that was how the reporter pitched it, to say, yes, you need to know. And I can tell you that the Sunday after that, when I went to my church, there was a woman I don't know well, I know her, but she just came up to me and said, thank you. Thank you for saying what we believe.
This is part of this, and the reason it's so great that you all are on the ground. But, we're fighting against a misperception among the public and among the media that somehow people of faith are uniformly against LGBTQ rights, against abortion access, are for this incredible degradation of immigrants. There's always a kind of surprise. Oh, people of faith actually, have something to say about this, and I think that's the reason it's so important that we keep having to hammer down. Like, actually, we're not outliers. The other side is outliers. And the more we can do that, we try to do that at the national office and, do national narrative work, the more it can happen in local communities where local people hear from local leaders, the more real it becomes. And so I just, again, thank you so much. Ross, you have been going through a lot in North Dakota, frankly, and I think North Dakota is such an interesting case because I think after Mississippi, North Dakota is one of the primary locations for Christian nationalism, which was, that was in a PRI survey. And so, what you are dealing with in North Dakota is a really strong kind of movement around, enforcing one idea of what religion can be and one idea about how people can live their lives, which has real implications for people across the state. Overall, how does it feel to be working in an Interfaith Alliance there, or working in communities where people really feel like this incredible, powerful Christian nationalist lobby is really trying to impose a certain way of being on the rest of the citizens?
Yeah, and in fact, North Dakota is tied for number one with Mississippi in that poll.
I would say congratulations, but I don't think it's in order here.
Yeah. So it's that it's an uphill climb, and that's the way it feels because there is a lot of funding behind these efforts. So when they bring in someone like Charlie Kirk with TPUSA or Tony Perkins, that there's a lot of outside support that's flowing into North Dakota. But I think we've been very active and very successful in pushing back. This upcoming weekend, I'll be providing a workshop on Christian nationalism to a UCC conference in Valley City. We just had a showing of God and Country with a panel discussion afterwards up in Grand Forks that, thank you, Paul, that you helped promote on the state's largest talk radio program. So that was very helpful. Got some great comments about your appearance on that call afterwards. And there are other efforts. We're hoping to bring the show. UCC in Moorhead has the show, and they're letting us use it hopefully in Bismarck and Minot yet. And there are some other programs that are being shown at faith communities around the state. And so it's like I said, an uphill battle. But I think that we've been really consistent in our efforts around North Dakota and pushing back on that message.
Well, I also want to say, and this is for all three of you, it's life-giving, even life-saving. For what, I'm just thinking about, if you're a LGBTQ youth in North Dakota, and all you're hearing is that you don't belong, you're wrong, you're not supposed to be that way, you're not supposed to love that way, you're not supposed to feel that way, you're not supposed to be that way. And then they hopefully come upon something from Interfaith Alliance of North Dakota, or that says, actually, you do belong here, and you are loved, and you are valued, and we're so glad that you exist. That is not in some ways, it feels maybe like just putting that out there feels like a small thing, but it's not a small thing if you're feeling completely alone and feel like you have nowhere to turn. And so, especially in these places, I'm just so grateful for how, Ross, you and so many across the state have shown up there. It's incredibly important. And, we need to really lift up one another and praise, offer praise to one another because it is lonely work, but it's incredibly valuable work. And let me turn back to you, Reverend, and just ask, you're in a state, Florida is, I guess, a little bit in a political state right now. Especially Amendment 4, and it seems like it's becoming more of a battleground state. Pennsylvania, you've got to be just getting slaughtered right now with all of the ads and all of the, what does it feel like to be, in that state in this moment where everybody's like, well, whatever Pennsylvania decides, I guess that's our new president. How does that feel as a resident? We're next door in New York, and so we kind of look over there and say, are they okay? How does it feel in Pennsylvania right now?
Well, fortunately, we're not saying, oh, whatever Pennsylvanians do, or whatever the others do. We're saying we need to encourage and facilitate our members, either on congregations or in social situations. We need to encourage people to be informed and to vote. And so we are concentrating on getting people to the polls, but not from a perspective of polls, souls to the polls. That's, some people are doing that, but we're more from vote faithfully, understand the ramifications of the issues that you're facing, understand that your vote counts. And yes, you can be frustrated, and yes, you don't like everybody or everything they do that someone does, but you have to be informed, and you have to make a decision, and you really have to commit. And so that's been our message.
I think that's it's very hopeful to hear that, and I hope that many people are hearing that. Up next, much more with Ann Flynn, Sharon Ewing, and Ross Keyes. You can hear full episodes of The State of Belief anytime on our website at stateofbelief.com. You'll also find links to topics we discussed this week, as well as transcripts and more. And make sure you subscribe at stateofbelief.com/subscribe. You're listening to The State of Belief, where religion and democracy meet. Welcome back to The State of Belief. I'm Interfaith Alliance President Reverend Paul Brandeis Raushenbush. My guests are Ross Keyes from Interfaith Alliance of North Dakota, Reverend Ann Flynn from Interfaith Alliance of Pennsylvania, and Reverend Sharon Ewing from Interfaith Alliance of Southwest Florida. This is, obviously a really important, critical election. And
this is a critical election, no question about that. But we also have to be prepared for after the election.
Right. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
These situations are not going away, and ignoring them will not make them go away. So
100%.
So the goal is have people encouraged to educate, to be informed, and then continue that, because the message has to be played over and over again, and there has to be opportunity for people to learn and to understand, and to take it to the local level. Yes, we have a national election. Yes, it's the president and vice president. But you know what? There's city council, right? There's school
100%.
board. There's
school
all
board.
Of that, and we have to be paying attention.
Yes, I think it's so important that we talk about Project 2025, and people are like, oh well, I would hate for that to come, but Project 2025 is here in many communities around the country, and this playbook is playing out. I think Florida definitely knows it. I think probably North Dakota is feeling that, and I think Pennsylvania has that in spaces too. And it's just, It's the reality of, and so being really clear about this moment, and that it matters. I'll say one more thing. I was just with the American Library Association, and I'm really promoting this idea that religious communities have to show up for librarians right now and libraries, because they are getting slaughtered often under the mantle of religion and Christian nationalist efforts. But I had never realized that libraries have advisory boards that are also elected, and sometimes those are on ballots. I didn't even know that was an elected position, and so it's just really important to recognize that it's not just the top of the ballot; it's all the way down. And the people on the show have heard me just share this. We had Moms for Liberty win 3 seats in my district in Manhattan. And introducing anti-trans resolutions in my district, which is includes Manhattan, Greenwich Village, and Chelsea. Anti-trans a resolution. And so this is not like no one can just say, oh well, it's not in my backyard. This is everywhere. We all has to be aware. Sharon, it seems like you want to jump in. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to interject. This actually relates to what Ann was saying about the election, because I think this might be something that you don't know about. One of the things that I'm excited that is the brainchild of our Vice President, Craig Cranston, Reverend Craig Cranston is the senior minister of St. John the Apostle Metropolitan Community Church in Fort Myers. But on November 4th, on the evening of the election, we are going to have an interfaith evening of prayer for the nation. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about it, and that it is not only important that we as faith leaders are praying for the nation, but that we model for people you can pray without spewing Christian nationalist language, and to say that we are going to pray for a fair and free and safe election, that we're going to pray for wisdom as people make their choices, for wisdom for whoever is elected, and as you alluded to, and for peace, whatever the outcome, because I think that's a really scary opposition. So I'm excited that we're saying that we need to come together to pray and to worship, and to pray for our nation.
That's just so important. One thing that we've been kind of, dancing around, but this feels very scary to me, is the potential for violence in the days after the election. This isn't like some sort of crazy idea. We have seen how this can play out. We saw after the 2020 election how people were really trying to use intimidation. It ultimately culminated in the January 6th attack on our Capitol. But it feels like much of that was almost a prelude to what could happen. I don't want to say it will happen, but I am curious how that feels on the ground in places like Harrisburg and in North Dakota and in Collier County and in Florida. These are three. I think it's really great that we have you three on, because these are very real contested places. And have you all been thinking about what you might do? I mean, we are in the middle of some scenario plannings about what is possible, but I'm just wondering, and look forward to working with each of you to kind of crowdsource wisdom on what the best practice is. But as long as we're talking, what are some of the things that you all are thinking about and maybe participating in as far as the civic safety net in some ways after the election, because people are threatening violence?
Well, I am Episcopalian in the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania. The concerns that came from around the diocese of the Harrisburg area and beyond is there's a real possibility that we will get pushback from the community, or we will have a response to the Tree of Life event and to our support of our Jewish brothers and sisters and siblings. And so what are we going to do with that? So we are now talking about how we might listen to what's going on the day of the event and how we will respond. So we have taken that up from that perspective, but then the worry about, or concern was voiced about doing voter education in the congregations, and how that might also cause us to be put in a vulnerable position. So that conversation is going on. People are concerned about it, and they want to be ready, and they want to diffuse. So that was part of the conversation. How do we listen, hear, and diffuse if that's necessary?
Mm-hmm. Anybody else thinking about scenarios post-election?
In North Dakota, I think we pretty much understand how many of these elections will go. I don't hear a lot of concern about post-election. At the same time, I think the things that we've been doing, such as the upcoming de-escalation training, and if there are other things that I hear of through the grapevine, I'll be pushing out to members. But I'd be surprised, but it's always good to be prepared in case we do have to defuse situations or participate in some way.
Right.
And I'm always getting new ideas. So even as I listen to us, I'm thinking we have an October 9th meeting of interfaith religious leaders, and we need to put that on the agenda to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that many of the faith communities across the country are really thinking about is the potential for violence after the election. I don't want to predict it, but the people are the stakes feel high, and there are already already people saying, well, it's going to be rigged and we're going to fight back, and so we're just we want to be thinking about what are the ways that we can be organized, and like do we each have the number of the Secretary of State for each of our states? Do we have contacts with the people who are in positions, and so that we can avail ourselves and make ourselves available for any efforts to help with civic unrest and how people are understanding the results of the election. So it really is it's a difficult moment, and we're hoping to do some advanced thinking about it so that we can be prepared. I had a chance to talk to Robbie Jones, who runs PRRI, the Public Religion Research Institute, and he does this county by county religious diversity census, which I don't know if you all have seen. It might be interesting for each of you to look at your own county, but you can go to prri.org and really look at the religious diversity in your own county. I think one of the things that we've seen recently is, for those communities that felt like, okay, well, we're all just homogeneous, but now there's maybe diversity that's coming in, or that, demographic change is creating anxiety. I think what we're, this incredible news cycle around Haitians, immigrants who were brought into a community to help fill jobs and are, have been part of a community being targeted for being different. I'm wondering how religious diversity functions, both, ways that have, hopefully not caused that kind of level of vitriol, but what are ways that interfaith diversity can help interfaith alliances grow community? Have any of you noticed a kind of religious diversity opportunity in your areas? Anybody want to speak on that?
Well, I probably most diversity in North Dakota would be over in the Fargo-Moorhead area, the eastern part of the state. And we've got some great leadership there. I've been able to tap into a local, it's the FM Fargo-Moorhead Interfaith Center, with a wonderful board, a wide range of faiths, beliefs or non-beliefs, and met with a number of leaders of the Muslim community, a variety of just a lot of different faith leaders in the Fargo area, and a lot of them work under the banner of the FM Interfaith Center, and that has really allowed us to make some wonderful connections. I don't know if you know, but there was an incident there a couple of years ago with the Patriot Front vandalizing an international marketplace where a lot of new Americans have shops or do business. And I'm part of another organization, North Dakota Human Rights Coalition, that is actually part of a lawsuit involving that case. But the faith response has been fantastic, and being able to work with those local leaders on the ground I think has been very, very rich for the Interfaith Alliance. It's strengthened us, and I look forward to those partnerships moving forward.
That sounds amazing. Patriot Front, is that like a white identity group?
Yep, that's exactly it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the, I had a chance to talk to some of the leadership of Southern Poverty Law Center several weeks ago when they released their hate index, or, they do a report every year. And the explosion of white identity and anti-Semitic and, hate groups, we're in a moment where we have to take that very seriously. And a lot of that does show up in places like the kind of places where you all are working. The example of neo-Nazis in Harrisburg, and then, this white identity group in North Dakota. And certainly in, one of the surprises to me when I became a little more familiar with Collier County was the anti-Semitism. That is, shame on me for thinking like that wouldn't be a problem. But it certainly is. And, in one moment when there was a rabbi who was associated with Interfaith Alliance of Southwest Florida, spoke out at a school board meeting and then was intimidated on his way back to his car. I mean, Collier County has religious diversity, but there is still this presumption that there has to be one way that is the dominant way.
Well, that is absolutely true. And that incident was when we were just getting started, and it gave us one of our first opportunities to speak out and to publish a guest commentary about not only Jews, but all of us need to stand up against anti-Semitism as a whole community. We do have diversity. We have some Muslim and Buddhist members of our alliance. But we need much more. There is certainly a largely prevailing Christian nationalist viewpoint from the majority, and you see it in funny ways, but a lot of it is paranoia about the federal government. And the county commission passed an ordinance, a Bill of Rights sanctuary county, that should the federal government take away our rights, do not be concerned. Collier County has got our back. And what that has to do is with things like gun rights. If the federal government were to pass some kind of legislation, rest assured Collier County will not comply. We'll do our own thing. They actually voted, and to me, this is just simply a measure of the craziness. They voted to take fluoride out of the water because this was poisoning people against their will. They had not chosen this. It's just one of those little, indicators of how crazy you can get. So we have a lot to speak up against and about, and we don't always win the case, but we're growing, and that's exciting.
Well, I want to keep going with you, Sharon, for a moment, because you did have a recent win, and with the school board, which I think, and I want to ask each of you to think of, just a recent win that you had, especially when there's a lot to look at and a lot coming at you all the time. But I think it's important to celebrate victories and say, hey, you know what, we can do things, and we're making a difference. And so, Sharon, do you want to talk a little bit about the way the recent school board election?
Well, it's really important, and I didn't know this until I moved here, that the school board actually is frequently decided in the August primary because they're nonpartisan, although Amendment 1 on the ballot is to make them partisan, which we are also fighting against. But what it means is whoever wins basically the primary, unless there's so many candidates that nobody gets 50%, which doesn't usually happen, then that person becomes the school board member. And this year we did have 2 contenders running against incumbents who were explicitly Christian nationalists in their language. One of them said that it was her goal, that students would stand for the flag and kneel for the cross. Very explicitly saying we need to bring back Christian values into the classroom. We already have a school board member who says that the separation of church and state is a historical mistake. It's not what the intenders meant. And so on a school board of 5, where you already have 2 people thinking like that, it's very scary. And we did massive get out the vote, but as you said, Ann, be informed and know that this is where people stand. This is what they say they stand for. Here we have so many people who are gone in the summer. It makes it particularly precarious. So we were saying to people, if you're not here, make sure you get your mail-in ballot. Know that they won't forward it, so give them your address in the north. And we really did believe that we made a difference. We got some assistance with text messaging and reaching out to underrepresented voters from national. And the good news is that the incumbents won, and Christian nationalism did not become the majority view of our board, but it's precarious. And I used to serve on a school board of 9. So the idea of just 5 for this whole county is amazing, but it was a win.
With 50,000 students or something like that. I mean, it makes a huge difference in the life of students, and it's just really important. What wins would you describe, Ross, as something that you can really point to as, something you're celebrating?
Well, I suppose I'd connect with what's coming up. We've got another legislative session coming up in January, which was quite difficult in 2023. We're going to have a couple of trainings on how to testify successfully, how to follow legislation for our pastors in our November and December calls. But I'd go back to that last session. It was difficult, just extremely difficult. But I think that I've seen one of the best ground games I've ever seen at a session, from faith leaders, from progressive organizations, people trying to protect religious freedom. I just hope that we can pull that off again. There were a number of bad bills that passed, but there are a number of bad bills that were stopped or were modified. And I like to point to that session as something that when folks come together and they work together and they communicate and they share messaging, that you can have success even in places where it can get pretty dark at times. And so I'm looking forward to putting together with a number of others, other great leaders in the state, putting together a strong ground game in 2025.
Just to pursue that, what were some of the bills that you were really concerned about?
There were about 20 anti-LGBTQ bills, and actually in response to that, we put together a letter to the editor that was signed by between 70 and 80 faith leaders in North Dakota across the state, saying this is the wrong thing to do. Please quit, pursuing this type of legislation that hurt our family, friends, and neighbors. I don't believe I'd seen a letter signed by faith leaders quite like that before. So it galvanized us, brought us together. But there were some terrible bills there. There was book banning bills, an attempt at school vouchers, and that'll come back again. It was, I believe, might have been vetoed, but that'll be back again in 2025, I assume. So we'll see some of the bills that didn't get through. I assume will be back on the table.
Well, congratulations. That's just huge. It's huge to get 70 to 80 faith leaders to speak out for LGBTQ folks. I mean, this is just, it makes a difference. This is, the only thing that will allow them for sure to win is to be quiet. That's how we win, is when we show up, when we organize, when we connect with people who are allies, and we win. And we win by not just like making statements, but actually recognizing that the law, ways laws pass and legislation is going to create environments that are either welcoming for everyone to thrive or not. And so we can't ignore what happens in the state legislature, in the state Senate, and what happens in government. It's really important that we make our voices known, and not let we see it so much, and you all have already said it. Like a lot of times, political leaders and the media just assume they know where religion stands on something. If we stay silent, they'll keep assuming that, and you know what they say about people who assume. So what we need to do is speak out, organize, and so congratulations, Ross. What about you, Reverend Ann?
Well, I can't speak to any one particular, but what I have noticed is the willingness of people to collaborate and come together. And I think that that's a success. So that, for instance, we were able to organize people across Harrisburg and the greater Harrisburg area to respond to, it was even further in the state, but to respond to the neo-Nazis last week. But I think there is an openness and a willingness to listen and to get engaged. And I think
and to show up.
Present.
I mean, I think that even that response is just so important, and does recognize it is the result of work, of talking to your neighbor, learning about your neighbor, and attempting to show up for one another in times of need. We're coming close to the end here, but I would love each of you to say, what's the best way to learn about what your organizations are doing? Do you have a website? Do you have a contact? Is there social media? What's the best way to learn about what you're doing in North Dakota, Ross?
Well, we're working on social media. I've still got to get that figured out, not being one that's very comfortable with it myself, unfortunately. So the best way is to get a hold of me directly or through Interfaith Alliance nationally, which has my contact information on your website, I believe.
Yeah. If people want to go to interfaithalliance.org, you can find out more about each of the affiliates and others that are not on this call in places like Oklahoma and Hawaii and Wyoming. We have many affiliates. And if you're interested in your local community and you're like, you know what I've been hearing is inspiring me, maybe we should start an Interfaith Alliance here. Interfaith Alliance is ready to work with you to organize in your own community and really kind of show up in the way these three great leaders have. They are not exclusive. They are, and also, we're everyday people. Like this is not, no one is born with this secret sauce of, well, I'm going to be, I'm going to be the organizer for my community. It's just, if you have that in you, if you feel like you're moved right now, reach out to interfaithalliance.org and ask us about how to organize or sign up to learn more about Interfaith Alliance. But also on our site, you can find out more about all the different affiliates and learn and figure out ways to support them. Sharon, I can't remember if you all have your own website or.
Working on getting our own website, but we do have an email address. So
okay.
You can write to us at swflinterfaith@gmail.com.
Okay.
And we'll get back to you. We will
SWFL interfaith@gmail.com. That all makes sense to me. Southwest Florida interfaith@gmail. Good. And Reverend Ann?
We are working on it.
Okay.
So it's best to go through national.
Okay. Everybody can go to if you want to get in touch with any of these Interfaith Alliances that have been on this call or any other Interfaith Alliance or learn how to get an Interfaith Alliance going in your own community, please reach out to interfaithalliance.org. You can go on our website, learn more specifically about the affiliate network, or just reach out to us at info@interfaithalliance.org. We would love to hear from you. I'm going to close this show out like I always close our shows out by asking each of you what gives you hope. So let me start with you, Reverend Ann. What gives you hope in this moment?
In this moment, the sun rises and I wake up, and that gives me hope.
I love it. Yeah. That always is a good reminder. Hey, we woke up today. We're alive today. That is great. Reverend Sharon.
It gives me hope that in this very conservative environment where I live, there is so much enthusiasm for our work. Our numbers keep growing. We've got 4 important events coming up in October and November, and people are responding. And so that is a huge beacon of hope among all the other Christian nationalist and other views that are out there, that people are responding to our message.
Ross?
Well, you all give me hope. The partners I have across the state give me hope, and working with good people every day, no matter what walk of life, good people out here give me hope.
Reverend Dr. Sharon Harris Ewing is president of the Board of Interfaith Alliance of Southwest Florida. Reverend Ann Flynn is a leader with Interfaith Alliance of Pennsylvania, and Ross Keyes is heading up Interfaith Alliance of North Dakota. Thank you all for being with us today on The State of Belief. You give me hope. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Please be sure to subscribe to The State of Belief at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform, or at stateofbelief.com/subscribe. We need your help to keep making The State of Belief. Become a partner in this crucial work with a financial contribution today. Information on how to donate is available at stateofbelief.com. That's stateofbelief.com. And share what you're getting out of this show with the people in your networks. Let's get more people listening and keep these conversations going on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at State of Belief. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of Religion News Service or Religion News Foundation. The State of Belief is produced by Ray Kirstein and is a production of Interfaith Alliance. Become a member today at interfaithalliance.org. And be sure to join us next week. I'll be in conversation with 2 women leaders speaking truth to power. Kristen Dumais, whose new documentary is titled For Our Daughters, Stories of Abuse, Betrayal, and Resistance in the Evangelical Church, and Mary Novak, Executive Director of the Network Lobby, which is about to launch the Nuns on the Bus and Friends Vote Our Future Tour. I can't wait. Until then, I'm Paul Brandeis Raushenbush on The State of Belief, where religion and democracy meet.